to my channel. Hi everybody, how you doing? I hope everybody is okay. And I decided that today I'm going to pick up the conversation about the Titanic story. And I'm going to get into the biography of one of the passengers on board the Titanic, and it is going to be the passenger of a survivor, and she led an awesome life, and it's amazing. She had an incredible character, an incredible life, an incredible personality. And the circumstances themselves surrounding her survivorship were also pretty incredible. She had a lot of spunk and gumption, and she really wasn't very afraid of anybody or anything. And so I'm glad that I'm getting to highlight her, because I'm sure that you have all heard about the unsinkable Molly Brown. Well, that's who I'm going to talk about today. So guys, as you know, the unsinkable Molly Brown, I had no clue who this was until I actually did my research on this story, and I finally figured out that the unsinkable Molly Brown is indeed the same Molly Brown who was aboard the Titanic in April of 1912. And therefore, because she was a survivor, um, she got the name the unsinkable Molly Brown. And so, on July the 18th, um, she's basically known as Margaret Brown. And supposedly she was born on July the 18th of 1867. And because in those days it was typical for families or generations to keep renaming their children, even if they were born in the same year and in the same month and even in the same week. They kept repeating certain names like Elizabeth, Lucy, Helen, whatever. And so we're assuming that this birth record does belong to the Molly Brown, who almost sank in the Titanic. And so she passed away on October the 26th, 1932. And so Molly Brown was an American socialite and philanthropist. And so she survived the RMS Titanic disaster, which sank in 1912, as you know. After unsuccessfully urging crew in her lifeboat number 6, to return to the field where the ship sank to look for survivors. That is how spunky she was. And so during her lifetime, therefore, her friends did call her Maggie, but obituaries referred to her as the unsinkable Mrs. Brown or Molly Brown. And so Molly was born near Mississippi River, Hannibal, Missouri, and it was a 3-room cottage. It's still known as the Molly Brown Birthplace, a museum on 600 Butler Street in Hannibal. Her parents were Irish Catholic immigrants, John Tobin and Joanna Collins, and her siblings were Daniel, Michael, William, and Helen. Both of her parents had been married to other spouses who died, and so it was a very acceptable and common thing for people whose spouses passed away to remarry. And so Molly had 2 half-sisters, Catherine by her father's first marriage and Marianne by her mom's first marriage. And so Molly attended Mary O'Leary's grammar school, which was just across the street from her birth home, and also very close by to Hannibal Gasworks, where her dad worked. And so, guys, at 18 years old, when her stepsister Marianne married John Landrigan, she moved to Colorado with them and with her brother Daniel. Now, Daniel went on to become a miner, and she shared a two-room log cabin with him, which is very pioneer type of life, right? Um, and so she found a job sewing and repairing draperies and carpets at a dry goods store called Daniels, Fisher and Smith. Now, Daniel was a miner, and so that would lead her to meet her first and future husband, her only husband, um, who I'm going to introduce to you right now. And so in Leadville, Molly met and married James Joseph Brown, JJ, an imaginative, self educated man. He was not rich, but she married him for love. And so I'm already liking her very much. After his death, Molly said, I had wanted a rich man, but I loved Jim Brown. I thought about how I wanted comfort from my father. So she also was marrying to pacify her father. And she wanted to pacify him because in those days, marriage was the ultimate security for any woman, right? It wasn't, like nowadays that you could become independent and just decide, I'm going to stay single or I'm going to marry. But Molly Brown did want to stay single, but she still wanted to appease her father. And so she was determined to stay single until a man presented himself who could give to my father, um, to her father, the things that she wanted him to have. And so that would be peace and comfort. You know what I'm saying? So Jim was as poor as they could come. And, she struggled hard with herself in those days because she says, I loved him, but he was poor. And so finally, I decided that I would be better off with a man that I loved than a man I married for wealth. And that goes without saying because many wealthy men would take advantage of the fact that they could give their spouse whatever they wanted and get away with abusing them as well. So I have to commend Molly Brown. She was a woman ahead of her times, I believe. And so Molly and JJ got married at the Annunciation Church on September the 1st, 1886 in Leadville. And they had two children, Lawrence and Catherine Helen. And apart from those two children, they also raised three nieces amongst themselves, Grace, Florence, and another Helen. Moving on to their mining career, the Browns acquired wealth in 1893. And as JJ's efforts proved to be instrumental in exploring a substantial ore seam at Little Johnny Mine, his employer, the Ibex Mining Company, awarded him 12,500 shares of stock and a seat on the board. Very impressive. And up until then, Molly had worked in soup kitchens to assist other mining families. So I'm very intrigued by her personality and her lifestyle. I'm impressed by her. So, up until that point, she had lived a very simplistic and hardworking life. And so a year after that, in 1894, the Browns bought a $30,000 Victorian mansion in Denver, known now still as the Molly Brown House, not the JJ House. And in 1897, they built an additional summer house in Avoca Lodge, southwest Denver, near Bear Creek. And I imagine that must be still a very awesome and beautiful resort to go to. So Molly became in those days, after acquiring wealth, a charter member of the Denver Women's Club whose mission was improvement of women's lives by continuing education and philanthropy. Adjusting to the life of high society lady, Molly became immersed in the arts and culture and very fluent in French, German, Italian, and Russian. Wow! I imagine any of us could have had a conversation with her. And so Molly also co founded a branch of Alliance Francaise to promote a love of French culture. She lobbied for women's rights to vote. And so I also imagine she must have been familiar with, or maybe even had met, Amelia Earhart since they were living in the same times, guys. And they were both involved in very similar issues as well. And so, getting on to their marriage and their relationship, um, JJ kind of grew apart um, from his wife, Molly, and for the simple fact that nothing criminal or evil or nasty. He just was not interested in the same societal issues and cultural matters as Molly was. And so eventually they drifted apart. And after 23 years of marriage, Molly and JJ signed a separation agreement, not quite a divorce, in 1909. And so JJ was a wonderful man. I imagine it must have been much harder to establish alimony agreements in those days and get away with it would have been much easier than it is now. So, however, Molly was to receive $700 a $700 monthly alimony payment. Um, Monthly, and it's not by my calculations, but that would have been equivalent to $23,000 um, a month to continue her travels and her political work. So it goes without saying that she was very interested and active in politics. And so Molly fundraised for Denver's Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, which was completed in 1911, and she worked with Judge Ben Lindsay to help destitute children and establish the very first juvenile court. And so, I guess for the United States of America, I'm really loving how Molly Brown um, led her life advocating for children's and women's rights. I really do love this character, and it is almost as though she's a character from a book and not from real life, but indeed, she was quite real, and I have included images to prove it to you. And so I'm quite impressed by her life so far. Molly did spend the year of 1912, which is the year that the Titanic sank in her maiden voyage, and she went to Paris mainly because she was visiting her daughter at school there, her daughter Helen, and she was part of the John Jacob Astor, who was also on board, party. And so she was there until she received word that her oldest grandchild, Lawrence, was ill. He took ill, and so she immediately booked a passage on the first available liner, which was leaving for New York, the RMS Titanic. And so, guys, there would have been good reason for her to panic when her grandson became ill, because in those days there was a horrible influenza circulating, and around 1912, 1915, in those years, and I know that Amelia Earhart also took quite ill, and you have to realize that in those days antibiotics was not available until the 1940s. at least not for these ailments. And so she did book the flight. And so when I say flight, I mean trip. I'm so used to talking about flights. She booked that trip under duress. She didn't book it, under the same circumstances as some of the other passengers there did, to mingle and start a new life and experience the high society and maybe rub elbows with the wealthy. No, she was experiencing a crisis. And so she must have been so worried. And, I imagine she was very preoccupied with getting back to New York. And so originally, her daughter Helen was to accompany her, but as she was studying in Paris, she decided to, hold off and take a little side trip to London with her friends. And so Molly boarded the Titanic as a first class passenger on April 10th at Cherbourg, France, when she did sail for New York City. And guys, I'm going to stop the vlog here just for a little bit and finish off the rest of the story later on, because I need to go and pick up a few things. And I'm kind of not looking forward to it because I know it's going to be busy and crowded. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably won't take you in there with me. Maybe I will, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure that I'm going to catch up with you back at home where I'll finish off the rest of this story. So I'll see you later. Hi guys, so I'm home now, and it's just as well that I didn't film. I have a haul for you to see, but it started to rain heavily, and so I have my hands full, and it's just as well. I only picked up a handful of things, and so I'll show you. Some of them are things that I know that I mustn't have, but I picked them up anyway because I have a craving, and so here they are. I'll show them to you. So guys, these are the things that I shouldn't be really having, and it does say it doesn't have soya or soy, but I'm not sure that I should be having it. So I really like the flavor of this, and I like it when I make these pickle sandwiches, something that I should not be having. And I needed some more green vegetables. And yes, I'm thinking of making some more tomato sauce. And I'm still debating on whether or not I should try more egg-free pasta or just keep making it with eggs. For now, I bought some more eggs, and we'll have to see how that goes. So anyway, I needed honey, and wow, look at this. It's open. It's open. Thank God it's sealed. It was wide open. I need it because when I make my dough, I use honey instead of sugar. And so that's my haul. All in all, it cost me 28 bucks. So we left off before where Molly Brown gets word that her grandson is gravely ill. And so she did what any other grandmother would have done. She tried to rush to the side of her grandchild as in the quickest way possible in those days. And so it wasn't just a matter of hopping on a train, maybe, or, taking a flight out, the first flight out. She had to book herself a seat on the maiden voyage of the Titanic RMS, and so, or the RMS Titanic. And so the ship did sail very early on April the 15th, 1912, and it did sink, I'm sorry. It sailed 2 days before, but it did sink after striking a huge and humongous iceberg at around 11:40 p.m. and on the 14th, that would have been. And so it didn't actually sink until around 2:20 a.m. on April the 15th, the following morning, a few hours later. And so Molly helped the people get on the lifeboats. And as you know, there were not enough lifeboats. There were a total of 2,224 people on board, and only like about half of that sum got onto the lifeboats. In other words, 1,500 people perished. And even though Molly did her best to have the captain or the captain of the lifeboat please turn around and go back and let's look for these lost souls, he relented. And so in 1932, at her death, Molly was the unsinkable Molly Brown because she helped in the evacuation. She took an oar herself on the lifeboat, and she urged the crew to please save more passengers. That is what she was mostly recognized for. Aside from the fact that she did organize assistance and tried to calm down the passengers, she must have been so brave. Think of all that anxiety that she was going through about her grandson, and then having to deal with this. It was such a shock to everybody. And so, she helped in the evacuation, and she did urge the crew to save more passengers, but her urgings were met with opposition. And it was the quartermaster, Robert Hitchens, who was in charge of the lifeboat number 6 at the time, who was afraid that the lifeboat would be sucked down, due to section, and the passengers would actually overweight the lifeboat as soon as they tried to get on board. And so that must have been a horrible decision to have to make. If it were me, I would have said, well, maybe they can just come along with us and hold our hands and stay in the water. Maybe we can take turns coming in and out or something like that. It was a horrible situation, guys. And I imagine it must have been very cold. Besides being extremely wet, it must have been so cold with all those icebergs floating around. I really can't imagine what they would have gone through. And so when Hitchens relented, he would not relent, and he would not give in, Molly threatened to throw him overboard. And so this shows you the incredible kind of spunk that Molly had. And that's what I'm saying, guys. Even though she had everything at the tips of her fingertips, she still always strove to do more, to be more. And she was never satisfied with this much. She had to have this much, you know. She was an incredible human being. And so, anyway, she threatened to throw him overboard. And so, upon being rescued by the RMS Carpathia, Molly organized further other committees with other survivors, and the committee secured basic necessities for second and third class survivors that were not as well equipped. 2 days into the voyage, your essential necessities may be worn out. And so they helped like that. They were sort of almost like a Red Cross organization. And so later on in life, in 1914, 6 years before the 19th Amendment that granted women rights to vote, Molly did run for a Colorado U.S. Senate seat, but she did end her campaign to serve as director of the American Committee for Devastated France during World War I. She that was really commendable. She gave up a chance to become very magnificent in the United States to go and volunteer during World War I in France. And so she was incredible, guys. She contributed to miners and their families during the Ludlow coal mine disaster, and she also organized international women's rights conferences, or at least one of them, which was held in Newport, Rhode Island. So she was, I believe, guys, she was much bigger than she appeared or seemed or looked. She was a very big human being with an even bigger heart. And so I don't understand why it is that we don't have more people like that around today. I don't know if it's the times or if it was the upbringing. I think, maybe because she did actually feel like she had it all, even before she gained all that material wealth with JJ. I think that she was comfortable with her life. She was comfortable about herself. And so that would have been one of the, if you're not comfortable with yourself, it's hard for you to grow, right? It's hard for you to become more of what you can really be. But if you are comfortable with yourself, and if you are at ease in the world, you can really grow as a person, I think. And it's incredible that even from her photographs, it doesn't appear as though she were, one of those high class, upper class. She dressed well, and she wore meticulous makeup. But she was like everybody else. She was like you and I. She was down to earth too. And that's what I'm trying to say. Molly Brown did not change with the times. She always stayed the same. She was always the same Maggie Brown who lived across the gas station or worked in the dry goods store when she was 18. She never really changed from that essential person. Working in a soup kitchen, volunteering in France for the prisoners and soldiers of war. She was incredible. She was an amazing person. And, she had an incredible life. And that's why I really chose to tell this story, because I think in these times, we don't see enough of that. Sometimes, you know, on social media, people who are good are often targeted due to conflicts of interest and things of the sort. So I think nowadays, even with social media, it's much harder to pinpoint the good souls that are out there because we only seem to hear of the negative stories, don't we? We don't hear enough of good stories like this one. And so, guys, that's the end of my discussion on the biography of the Unsinkable Molly Brown, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. I apologize for this evening, the lighting. I left early, and that situation started again, and I had to redo take after take. I don't know what to do about this one man that won't leave me alone. But I think, you know, because it's affected my computers, what happens is if I try to go for help, all of my power will be cut off. And so after the electricity comes back, my computer will have crashed. And so I'm being punished. I'm being punished for trying to go to the authorities about this person who I have seen coming after me on the road from time to time. And nobody can seem to get him to stop. I never know what day he's going to pick. It could be a Sunday. It could be after work. But I don't know what else to do. Anyway, so I hope that you bear with me. I did leave the house. It was right around 6 p.m. when there was still lots of daylight. And here I was at 9 p.m. going through that thing after dark. So it's almost as though he knows when to start targeting. He waited until the sun went down. And I know that he was close by because that's what I was told. He was close by. Anyway, no more ranting. I just wanted to apologize for the light. I'm not doing it on purpose. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.